For most of your marketing budget, you're going to lean on past data and past success and then make those adjustments. Hey, I'm Spencer Powell and welcome back to Builder Funnel TV, where remodelers and custom builders come to grow their businesses. Today I want to talk about how to create a really solid marketing plan for your remodeling or custom home business. Now we're going to go through a few components. I'm going to dive into some numbers so we can get a little more tactical, because sure, creating a marketing plan in theory sounds easy, like let me run you through this 6 steps of here's what to do to create this magical plan. There are some steps, but there's some nuance to them. So we're going to talk about a few high-level things. So one, you have to start with your goals. You can't create a marketing plan if you don't have any clear goals. The next piece is you need to look at last year's data. So we're going to talk about that in more detail. That's a really critical piece of creating the marketing plan for the next year. And then from there, we can decide what you want to increase, what you want to decrease, maybe what you want to cut. And then there's always some experimentation in marketing, so maybe what you want to add in to maybe test and play around with. And I will highlight this right now and probably many more times throughout the video. You have to track. You have to track what you're doing. Otherwise, a lot of this is all for naught. So let's dive in and let's look at a really tactical example. So let's say you're a remodeler, design build remodeler doing $2.5 million in sales. So you set a goal, which is the first step, a goal of $3 million. Okay, now we have a clear goal. So first, what we're going to do is look at last year. So let's say last year you had from one channel word of mouth referrals, and that drove $1 million of the 2.5. Then you had your website, and that drove another $1 million. So now you're at $2 million, and then you had signs and trucks, and that drove $250,000, so $250,000, and then pay-per-click ads drove your last $250,000. I'm going to keep this fairly simplistic in terms of not giving you 10 different channels and how much they all drove for the purposes of the example, but most likely you have more than 4 channels that drove some revenue. So that's our example. Again, you have to track it. If you don't know what last year looked like, then you're kind of going into this year a little bit blind, and you're going to have to make some new assumptions, and you're going to have to go off of anything you can possibly go off from last year, even if it's just asking people where they heard about you. If you didn't track anything from like an actual data perspective or like a tracking cookie perspective on your website, but you just got that anecdotal, people called in, you asked them, that's much, much better than nothing. So take whatever you have, whatever knowledge you have of the previous year, where that revenue came from, and you want to document that, and then we're going to move forward into planning for next year. So we want to track it, and we want to break it down by channel. And that's really important because now we're going to look at kind of one of these nuanced points. A lot of people might just look at this and go, okay, let's see, website word of mouth, that drove $1 million. Well, I don't know that we can do that much more to really drive more word of mouth and referral. From a marketing tactical perspective, maybe we can, maybe we can't, but usually those just kind of come when they come. So we're going to look at website, signs and trucks, and pay-per-click. Those were our 3 kind of like marketing expenditure type channels. So you might look at this and go, wow, the website drove $1 million and these other 2 drove $250,000. So, the website performed much better. Maybe, maybe not. So the nuance is, let's look at that $1 million and see what kinds of projects they were. Were they in your sweet spot? Were they in your wheelhouse? And were they good margin projects? Those are 2 critical questions that you have to ask. Then we're going to do that for trucks and signage, and we're going to do that for pay-per-click. And what you might find is that maybe one channel, maybe pay-per-click, and this is just an example, it drove only $250,000 in revenue, but maybe it was 2 projects and they were $150,000 and $100,000, and they were super high margin and the exact type of projects you want. Well, then one question to ask yourself is, can I just double my spend that I did last year on pay-per-click? Because those drove some really great projects. Maybe I should triple my spend there, and maybe I can get triple the revenue, but that's great because that's really profitable revenue. That's high margin work. It's the exact type of projects I want. You're going to do the same thing with your website. You're going to look at $1 million coming from your website, but then again, the importance of tracking, we want to break that down. What came from organic search? What came from social media? What came from referral sites like Houzz or you got listed in a newspaper or you're featured on a subcontractor site, what channels actually drove the traffic, the leads, and then converted into sales. And maybe you find out that 600,000 of that million came from organic search, and those were all really high quality projects. And then maybe you spent some money on some of those other channels to maybe be listed on some third-party sites, and those drove the rest of the 400,000, but they were all kind of lower margin. They weren't kind of the right type of projects. Now you have a lot clearer direction going into next year. So as you're looking at last year, you want to look at revenue by channel, but then break it down further and see what type of revenue. Was it the projects you want to attract, the clientele you want to attract, and were those projects strong margin? This is the nuanced step that will separate a lot of people. If you can just look at that, that will give you tons of information, because you can quickly look at this year. Even if you change nothing, you just say, I'm going to do the same channels. You can cut some channels, increase some channels, and that's a good strategic test to say, we'll probably perform a lot better if we just make those moves, because we're increasing the channels that brought us the best projects. So the next thing you have to do is look at cost per channel. So kind of reference it with the pay-per-click example, but let's say you're spending $1,000 a month on pay-per-click and you drove the 250,000 and you're like, these are great projects. I want more of those projects. Can you spend $2,000 a month? Can you spend $3,000 a month and drive more of those better projects? That is a great test based on real data. And then time will tell as you continue to track, does that play out? Are you able to get triple the output if you just triple the spend in the right types of projects? Maybe as you triple the spend, you get some lower margin projects, and maybe that year was just kind of a lucky year. But you'll still be able to see percentage-wise, like, hey, we tripled our spend, and 75% of the projects were still projects we really like, so we're still happy to spend that much money in this channel. Same with the website side. You're going to look at that and go, okay, we need to grow our organic search because 60% of that channel was really good projects, and then we're just going to get really good at weeding out the other projects. Well, can I double my spend there? Can I double my traffic and my lead output so that I can get more of those better projects? And then you can eliminate some of those areas. So as you're looking at dollars in and revenue out, you want to figure out what your cost per lead is for those different channels and see if that starts to make sense. But again, you want to do it in the context of, okay, there's kind of a raw cost per lead number, and that is helpful to know. But I think it's more helpful to know where the really good margin projects came from. Because a lot of people say, I just need to get my cost per lead down to X. It's too high, or I'm benchmarking against other companies and their cost per lead is, much lower, and I need to get mine down. Maybe, maybe not. If your cost per lead is really high, but all the projects are amazing and high margin, then I would say that's okay. As long as those numbers work for your business and you're hitting your goals, then that's okay. So don't let those numbers like cost per lead get you trapped into just thinking, I just need to lower this number. Because honestly, if you're lowering your cost per lead really aggressively, you're probably driving a lot of leads from a lot of junky channels, and you can get a lower cost per lead, and you're going to have to do a lot of weeding out. And yes, we're going to have to do that. That's a part of marketing. That's a part of sales, is weeding out. But we don't want to just dump on the lead flow so that we have to weed a bunch out and say, my cost per lead's low. It's lower than all of my competition or all of my peer group or whatever it is. So take that extra step to look at those margins and those projects that have really strong margins. So again, as you're looking at this coming up this year and you're going, okay, what am I going to do for marketing? Again, you have to start with your goal. You have to make sure you're looking at last year's data or any data that you have to go off of, because that's how you're going to make decisions moving forward. And then you're going to game plan from there. You're going to say, okay, well, I can quickly see, add to this, cut to this. And then kind of the experimentation bucket is always the one where you kind of have to have your head up, okay, I should probably be getting invested in video. Okay, I probably need to look at my website and any new trends happening there. Those are things that you maybe are going to add in as an experiment and just figure, hey, they may or may not pan out, and I may have to just test them for a year. But for most of your marketing budget, you're going to lean on past data and past success and then make those adjustments. And honestly, That's why a lot of our customers, in year one, they see some results, but it's very much a building year because they don't have a lot to lean on. But then as you go into year 2, year 3, year 4, it gets more and more exciting because you actually put the tracking in place, you measured, and then you're making really intelligent decisions going into year 2, year 3, year 4, etc. And if you need help building a really solid marketing plan, head over to builderfunnel.com/blueprint and you can book a meeting. But otherwise, hopefully this video helped you with some quick tactical steps for creating a really killer marketing plan going into next year. All right, guys, head on over to builderfunnel.com/blueprint and we'll see you next time here on Builder Funnel TV.